Now let's have a look at dams and the effects of dams. So what are dams? Dams are important and essential to our society because they provide freshwater reservoirs for us to use. Can you think of an example of such a dam? Warragamba Dam. Here's a hint. The Murray-Darling Basin is actually a major dam. It stores a lot of water for irrigation as well as domestic use. Such dams are essential for us, but what are the issues on the environment? This has become a major issue and will continue to be so for a long time. Some rivers have either totally or partially ceased flowing due to the water being tied up in water storage or diverted into irrigation schemes. The Murray-Darling Basin Commission has allocated a certain amount of water to flow from dams to mimic flood conditions in the Barmah-Millewa red gum forests, allowing plants, birds, native fish, reptiles and frogs the opportunity to breed. Schemes such as these should be expanded and researched to allow scientists to identify if broader and long-term benefits to society and the environment can be achieved. It's very important, guys, that you have a look at the links of the examples, including Snowy River environmental flows, or reading up on the Murray-Darling River Basin river management websites, which is all on the New South Wales government, and also having a look at even Nature Conservation Council websites to have a look at how we share our water, and have a read of more information because these people survey and have a look at and monitor in the environment in order for us to understand the effects and impacts that are happening and how we can try and minimize them, because we do require a lot of water. The barricade restricts natural movement, but then they regulate and control river levels, which stop natural flooding processes. This has been addressed by introducing environmental flows, which are the artificial inputs of water into rivers and other areas that miss out on them because of upstream damming. So they are designed to mimic natural flow variations of the river, maintain natural water levels in pools, creeks and rivers during times where the river is not flowing, and maintain river height within natural limits to ensure growth and reproduction of natural flora and fauna. Ultimately, environmental flows replace or stimulate chemical, geological and ecological processes essential to a healthy river system. So it's there to sort of minimize the effect of damming the river in the first place, to use them for domestic and agricultural use. So what are the main points? What's necessary? It should mimic where it flows and the variations, because within seasons and rainy seasons and dry seasons, the river has its natural flow. And as we know, there are patterns that occur in nature, and the environmental flows should mimic those patterns depending on the appropriate seasons. They should also make sure that they maintain natural levels, and not overflowing and not underflowing depending when the river, depending on the flow of a river of its in its natural state. And of course, maintaining river height within natural limits to ensure the growth. So that's just a summary. Many people believe these environmental flows are a waste of water. What's your opinion on that? Alright, now let's have a look at stormwater treatment. Effective stormwater treatment is another essential part of maintaining the health of our waterways. What is stormwater? Stormwater is rainwater and anything else that it carries which runs into our waterways untreated. What are some of the things which might be carried in stormwater, and why would it be important to manage this? We have a lot of different councils and a lot of different areas which are treating some stormwater to reduce how many pollutants enter our local waterways. And some of those, I've put in a case study about the Woollahra Golf Club stormwater, so have a look at that. But also think about some, for example, local to me, there is the Lane Cove River, which often there were algal blooms and big issues there at one point, because from the factories there were these pollutants, extra pollutants, running into the system. And if you remember from ecosystems in Year 9, you may have come across the word eutrophication. So that's something interesting to maybe remember what it was. So technology can prevent stormwater pollutants, including high nutrient loads, which cause extra growth of algal blooms, which is eutrophication, rubbish, organic pollutants, and chemical pollutants such as oil from vehicles, bitumen from roads, and silt from entering the riverine ecosystems. They can be very sensitive, so we need to be careful. Much of the stormwater directly enters the ocean and through ocean outfalls, leading to rubbish such as plastic and animal droppings being carried out to sea. This is really harmful to marine animals, such as plastic bags, where a lot of turtles think that plastic bags are jellyfish, and they actually die. Huge populations of turtles die because they are consuming these plastic bags. And of course, we know about other plastics which catch birds and all of those and cause them to die. So one way that stormwater can be treated are with these large floating barrier booms. They trap large components which are solid and they're floating on the surface of the water, and then they're disposed of. They're positioned at the mouth of creeks to prevent the rubbish from entering the waterways. What kind of pollutants might they fail to do? Then there are gross pollution traps, which are used to capture surface rubbish, but they are placed at the point of entry of stormwater into the creek. This prevents the rubbish from even entering the creek, capturing objects which may have become submerged, which the floating barrier would have missed. So the things that are not floating. Both methods depend on regular maintenance and cleaning of the devices. Have you seen any pollution traps? If not, why? If so, why? The best way to ensure pollution-free stormwater is to prevent pollution in the first place. There are 3 categories. There's litter, which are cigarette butts, plastics, paper bottles and cans. We've already spoken about some of the damages of these into the waterways. Then there are chemicals such as detergents, solvents, oils, pesticides and fertilizers. And we've also talked about things like, oil was something that when I was growing up, it was, we were just learning about how we should never ever dump the leftover oil from, fried food or whatever it was down the sink ever, because that can cause major issues in the waterways. So it's only when big things occur, big impacts occur, is when we sort of educate the public to let them know not to do things like that. And of course, pesticides and fertilizers can have massive effects. Then natural pollutants as well, such as leaves, grass clippings, and animal feces. And if you have we're going to look in the next slide, we're looking at the effects of these items entering our waterways. So excess sediment and soil can lessen the amount of light that penetrates through the water, reducing photosynthesis of the plant life that's in the water. Sediments can also clog fish gills. Organic matter removes oxygen from the water. When this happens, what happens? The living things that are not photosynthesizing organisms, the heterotrophs, which require oxygen for respiration, won't be able to respire, and they won't survive. Because all the algae, the small organisms, become increase, and then they kind of like live on the top of the water, and they block any more oxygen being able to be added to the water. Litter such as cigarette butts can add toxins to waterways. Bacteria associated with pollutants affects humans and often leads to the closure of beaches and other waterways for recreational use. So you can see that the effects are really high, and they can be really bad, especially thinking about how they might have found some of these issues. So, for example, if there's some sort of pollution entering the waterway or bacteria, people obviously would get sick first. We can avoid all of these by getting rid of or treating our water properly in the first place. And you can have a look at how Sydney Water treats its stormwater through the links and information provided. Let's have a look at now sewage treatment. Another type of waste water that needs to be treated is sewage. Human wastes, paper and vegetable matter, which is 99.9% liquid and 0.01% solid. Where does home sewage come from? 40% comes from toilet, 30% from bathing, 15% from laundry, 10% from the kitchen, and other sources are 5%. Which might be like the drains outside and things like that, which is minuscule in comparison. It's essential that sewage is treated because it harbors very dangerous bacteria that can impact on the health of living organisms, including humans. That's why it's a waste product. In New South Wales, sewage is treated in 3 stages: primary, secondary, and tertiary. What do you think happens in each stage? Have a think before we move on. Think about the things that are in sewage. Primary is basically removing the big bits, large particles, the scientific term, and objects using screens, like a sieve. Removal of suspended matter via the process of sedimentation, where you allow the solids to settle on the bottom. This part of the treatment process removes about 30% of the total pollutants and 30% of the organic matter that consumes oxygen as it decays. So, if you get rid of the organic matter that consumes oxygen as it decays, then you are keeping some of the oxygen in the water. Secondary stage, bacteria consumes more of the total pollutants and organic matter. As a result, a sludge settles to the bottom. The liquid upper layer is then disinfected in ponds by chlorination or ultraviolet radiation. The sludge can be used on agricultural land, disposed of in landfills or incinerated. But there's always effects of incineration as well. So that might not always be the best option. Tertiary stage. The liquid is filtered again, usually through sand filters, to remove any remaining solids. Further disinfection. Nutrients such as phosphorus and nitrogen are removed because you don't want to add too much nutrient to the water, to the waterways. And the effluent is then discharged at deep ocean outfalls kilometers off the coast. I just answered that question for you. So that's great if you live along the coast, but what do places that are not near the coast do? There are 3 main types of land-based methods which can be used. So one of them is lagoons. Bacteria in a series of interconnecting lagoons break down sewage. However, this can produce gases with a strong odor. It's possible to collect the gases and burn them to generate electricity. The sludge produced needs to be removed every few years and disposed of. The second land-based method is land filtration. This involves flooding a gently sloping paddock from the elevated end with the raw sewage at about 10 centimeters thick. The sewage is broken down and purified as it filters through the soil. The liquid component is captured at the bottom of the hill above the water table. Any nutrients in the sewage is utilized by the grass and bacteria in the soil. The paddock is then let to dry for a week and then used for grazing. This process can be repeated, but it's only suitable for warm areas which are low in rainfall and high in evaporation. We have another method, artificial wetlands. This is when sewage is passed through the roots of a bed of aquatic grasses and plants. The plants enable oxygen to move into the sewage from the roots. The plants also take up any nutrients through the roots. However, this method requires a large amount of land and the sludge remains in the system. Finally, we have the fourth, which is a septic tank system. Sewage travels through the septic tanks to a leaching field after it goes through the septic tank. Once in the leaching field, sandy sediments are necessary. Once in the leaching field, sandy sediments are necessary to oxidize the sewage water and filter out the bacteria from it. Ammonium that travels through the unsaturated zone is oxidized and converted to nitrate by the time it reaches the water table. Areas with high populations that rely on septic tank systems have to be concerned about the possibility of the groundwater achieving high levels of nitrate concentrations. And that's the end, guys. Ensure that you have a go at all the activities that are there for you. Yes, the activities end with completing one of the a flowchart of any kind of sewage treatment. It is recommended that you do one that is from a case study and not just pick a random one, so that you can refer to that as an example in your answer if you are asked about a question. Alright guys, make sure you complete the work, and I would like to see the assessed question submitted to me for feedback so that you can improve on your answers. Thanks guys, hope you enjoyed this module.